3 months after their divorce, Adrian Moretti, billionaire, control freak, king of his own empire, saw his ex-wife across a crowded mall, pregnant, glowing, hand in hand with another man. The jealousy that tore through him wasn't just about losing her. It was about the possibility that the child she carried might be his. And in that moment, the man who'd built his fortune on dominance realized he'd lost the only thing that ever truly mattered. If you want to see how far jealousy, pride, and second chances can take two broken people, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Adrian Moretti didn't believe in coincidence. He believed in patterns, data, predictable outcomes shaped by deliberate action. He'd built a billion-dollar empire on that philosophy, turning chaos into order through sheer force of will and strategic precision. Emotions were variables to be managed. People were assets or obstacles. And control was everything. Which was why standing frozen in the middle of Westfield Plaza on a bright Tuesday afternoon, staring across a sun-drenched corridor at his ex-wife, felt like stepping off the edge of the world. Lena. 3 months. It had been 3 months since he'd signed the divorce papers in his attorney's office, his signature sharp and final across the bottom of the page. 3 months since she'd walked out of their penthouse with 2 suitcases and a silence so complete it had felt like death. 3 months since he'd convinced himself that ending their marriage was the rational choice, the necessary amputation of a limb that had become infected with constant arguments, impossible expectations, and a loneliness that somehow felt worse than being alone. He'd told himself he was fine. He'd been lying. But nothing could have prepared him for this. Lena stood outside a maternity boutique, her profile backlit by the afternoon sun streaming through the skylight above. She wore a soft cream sweater that draped over the unmistakable curve of her belly, her dark hair pulled back in a loose bun that made her look younger, softer, more radiant than he remembered. Her hand rested protectively over that curve, fingers splayed wide as if sheltering something infinitely precious. She was pregnant. The realization hit him like a physical blow, stealing the air from his lungs. And she wasn't alone. A man stood beside her, tall, lean, dressed in casual elegance that spoke of old money rather than new power. His hand was at the small of her back, proprietary and comfortable. As Adrian watched, Lena laughed at something the man said, her face tilting up toward him with an openness Adrian recognized because he'd once been the recipient of it, before he'd crushed it beneath the weight of his own ambition. The jealousy that surged through Adrian's chest was so sudden, so visceral, it actually made him stagger. His hand shot out, gripping the back of a nearby bench to steady himself. Around him, shoppers flowed past in oblivious streams, but Adrian couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't think beyond the primal roar of possession screaming through his veins. Mine. Except she wasn't. Not anymore. He'd made sure of that. "Mr. Moretti?" Adrian's head snapped toward the voice. Marcus, his head of security, stood 3 feet away, concern creasing his weathered face. The 2 bodyguards flanking him maintained their professional distance, but their eyes tracked the crowd with habitual vigilance. "Sir, are you all right?" Adrian forced himself to straighten, to reconstruct the mask of composure that had slipped. "I'm fine." Marcus's gaze followed Adrian's line of sight, landing on Lena. Understanding flickered across his features, quickly suppressed. "Would you like to leave, sir?" "No." The word came out harder than intended. Adrian's jaw clenched as he watched Lena's companion lean down to murmur something in her ear, watched her smile in response. The intimacy of the gesture felt like broken glass under his skin. "How far along is she?" The question detonated in his mind with the force of revelation. Adrian was good with numbers. Exceptional, actually. It was one of the reasons Moretti International had quadrupled its value under his leadership, and the math here was devastatingly simple. They'd signed the papers 3 months ago, but the separation had started 6 months before that, when Lena moved into the guest room after their final catastrophic fight. Before that, there had been a brief window, a handful of nights when they'd reached for each other in the dark, seeking comfort even as everything else crumbled. Desperate, wordless encounters that felt more like goodbye than connection. He stared at the curve of her belly, his mind calculating with terrible precision. 5 months? 6? His heart was hammering now, a drumbeat of hope and fear that made his hands shake. The baby could be mine. The thought was insane, impossible, and yet it rooted itself in his chest with absolute conviction, growing like wildfire through his carefully constructed defenses. Sir, Marcus's voice carried a note of warning. Perhaps we should. Adrian was already moving. He didn't plan it, didn't think it through. One moment he was standing paralyzed by the bench, and the next his feet were carrying him forward with single-minded purpose. The crowd parted around him the way crowds always did, instinctive deference to the kind of power that radiated from every line of his custom-tailored suit and precisely controlled movements. Lena didn't see him coming. She was examining a tiny onesie the boutique worker had brought out, holding it up with a soft expression that made Adrian's chest tighten painfully. But her companion noticed. The man's eyes sharpened, his posture shifting subtly into something more alert as Adrian approached. Lena. His voice came out rougher than intended. Lena's head jerked up, her eyes widening as they locked with his. For a fraction of a second, Adrian saw everything flash across her face. Shock, fear, anger, and something that might have been pain before her expression smoothed into careful neutrality. Adrian. Her tone was polite, distant, the voice she might use with a stranger. What are you doing here? Shopping. The lie was automatic. He hadn't set foot in a mall in 5 years. Everything he needed was delivered or purchased by his assistant. I could ask you the same question. Her hand moved protectively over her belly. The gesture was unconscious, defensive, and it made Adrian's jaw clench. I don't owe you explanations about my schedule. Her voice was steady, but he caught the slight tremor underneath. We're not married anymore, remember? The words hit like a slap. Adrian felt his control fracturing, felt the careful distance he'd maintained since the divorce crumbling under the weight of seeing her like this, pregnant, glowing, with another man's hand on her back. Are you... He stopped, hating the uncertainty in his own voice. Started again. How far along are you? Lena's eyes narrowed. That's none of your business. Like hell it isn't. The words came out harder than he intended. Around them, a few shoppers glanced over, drawn by the tension crackling in the air. Adrian forced his voice lower, more controlled. Lena, answer the question. No. Her chin lifted, defiant. I don't have to answer anything you ask, Adrian. You gave up that right when you served me divorce papers. You're the one who wanted out. Even as he said it, Adrian knew it was a lie, or at least not the whole truth, but pride wouldn't let him admit that he'd been the one to file, that he'd convinced himself ending their marriage was some kind of mercy to them both. I wanted you to fight for us. Lena's voice cracked, just slightly. There's a difference. Before Adrian could respond, her companion stepped forward, positioning himself subtly between them. Up close, Adrian revised his initial assessment. The man was younger than he'd appeared from a distance, early 30s maybe. Athletic build beneath the expensive casual wear, but it was the intelligence in his hazel eyes that caught Adrian's attention. Sharp, assessing, unintimidated. I think the lady asked you to leave her alone. The man's voice was calm, almost pleasant, but there was steel underneath. Maybe you should respect that. Adrian's eyes cut to him, cold and lethal. This is a private conversation. Nothing about this looks private. The man gestured subtly at the growing audience of curious onlookers, and nothing about it looks consensual. Miles. Lena's hand landed on the man's arm. It's okay. Miles. So the interloper had a name. Is it? Miles didn't take his eyes off Adrian. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're being cornered by someone who doesn't understand the word no. Adrian felt his temper flash white hot. You have no idea what you're talking about. Then enlighten me. Miles crossed his arms, utterly relaxed despite the bodyguards hovering at Adrian's shoulders. You're Adrian Moretti, billionaire, CEO of Moretti International, Lena's ex-husband. His smile was sharp. And judging by the way you're looking at her, someone who's having a really hard time accepting that X part. Miles, please. Lena's voice carried quiet distress. This isn't helping. Helping what? Adrian's attention snapped back to her. Lena, who is this? A friend. Her jaw set stubbornly. A good friend. Unlike you, he actually shows up when I need him. The words landed like physical blows. Adrian felt something crack inside his chest, some last bastion of pride crumbling under the weight of that simple truth. He hadn't shown up, not when she'd begged him to skip the London merger meetings for their anniversary, not when she'd asked him to come home early just once so they could have dinner together, not when she'd cried in their bathroom at 2 a.m, thinking he was asleep, mourning the distance that had grown between them like a cancer. He'd chosen the Empire over her, every single time, and now she was standing in front of him, carrying a child that might be his, with a man who clearly understood what Adrian had failed to grasp until it was too late. "Lena," his voice came out rough, desperate. "The baby, is it—" "Don't!" She cut him off, her eyes blazing. "Don't you dare ask me that. Not here. Not like this. I have a right to know. You have nothing." The fury in her voice made several people nearby stop and stare openly now. Lena's chest rose and fell rapidly, her hand pressed protectively over her belly. "You signed away your rights when you decided our marriage was too inconvenient to save. You don't get to show up now and demand answers just because you're feeling territorial. This isn't about territory." Adrian took a step closer, lowering his voice. "Lena, please, just tell me, is there any possibility—" "Back off!" Miles moved smoothly between them again, his pleasant expression hardening into something far more dangerous. She said no. "Keep pushing, and we're going to have a problem." Adrian's hands clenched into fists. Every instinct screamed at him to remove this obstacle by force, but the horror in Lena's eyes stopped him cold. She was looking at him like she didn't recognize him, like he was a threat. He'd done that. Reduce their relationship to this, her fear, his desperation, and a chasm between them that felt impossible to cross. "I'm sorry." The words felt foreign in his mouth. Adrian Moretti didn't apologize, didn't back down, didn't show weakness, but he forced them out anyway. "I didn't mean to upset you, I just—" He stopped, struggling for words that wouldn't sound like accusations or demands. "I need to know if I'm going to be a father." Lena's expression flickered. For just a moment, he saw past her anger to something softer, more complicated. Pain, longing, regret. Then her walls slammed back into place. "If you were going to be a father," she said quietly, "you would have been a husband first. You would have been there." Her eyes held his, unflinching. "You weren't. So whatever happens now, whatever I decide, it's my choice, not yours." She turned away, one hand still pressed to her belly. Miles gave Adrian a long, measuring look before following her. "Lena, wait. Let her go, sir." Marcus's hand landed on Adrian's shoulder, gentle but firm. "You're making a scene." Adrian looked around for the first time, really seeing the crowd that had gathered. Phones were out. People were recording. Tomorrow, this would be all over social media. The billionaire CEO melting down in public over his pregnant ex-wife. He didn't care. "Follow them." The order came out sharp. "I want to know where she's living, who she's with, everything." Marcus hesitated. "Sir, I'm not sure that's—" "I'm not asking your opinion." Adrian's voice turned to ice. "I'm giving you an order. Find out everything about that man, about her current situation, about—" He stopped, the word catching in his throat. "About the baby." "Yes, sir." Adrian watched Lena disappear into the crowd, Miles's protective hand at her back. The jealousy was still there, burning like acid, but underneath it was something far more terrifying, hope. Because if the baby was his, if there was even a chance, then he hadn't lost everything. Not yet. The penthouse was dark when Adrian returned, shadows pooling in corners like accusations. He didn't bother with the lights, just poured 3 fingers of scotch and stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, watching the lights blur through the crystal glass. His phone buzzed. Marcus. Preliminary report ready, sending encrypted file. Adrian set down the scotch and opened his laptop. The file loaded quickly. Marcus was nothing if not efficient. But the contents made Adrian's jaw clench hard enough to hurt. Lena Vale, formerly Moretti. Current residence, 2E847 Maple Street, Unit 4B. Modest 2-bedroom apartment in a middle-class neighborhood. Rent, $1,800 per month. Employment, part-time administrative assistant at Bennett & Associates law firm. Hours, 20 per week. Salary, $32,000 per year. Financial status: no savings account over $5,000. One checking account with current balance of $2,347. No credit cards. No vehicle registered in her name. Adrian's hands tightened on the laptop. She was living on nothing, less than nothing. The woman who'd shared his penthouse, who'd had unlimited access to his accounts, who'd worn couture and traveled in private jets. She was making $32,000 a year and living in a building that probably had broken elevators and thin walls. He kept reading. Companion identified: Miles Bennett, age 34. Partner at Bennett and Associates. Net worth approximately $8 million. Never married. No children. Relationship status: appears to be friends/possibly dating. Subject: Bennett frequently accompanies Ms. Vale to medical appointments, grocery shopping, and social events. Level of physical intimacy: inconclusive. Pregnancy details: subject is approximately 22 to 24 weeks pregnant based on visual assessment. Regular prenatal care at Mercy Women's Health Clinic. No father listed on intake forms. No male companion present at appointments except subject Bennett. Unconfirmed if he is the father. 24 weeks. Adrian did the math again, slower this time. 6 months, which meant conception would have been around. His mind flashed to a memory he'd tried to bury. 8 months ago. A rare night when he'd come home before midnight, found Lena curled on the couch crying over some movie. He'd sat beside her without a word, and she'd turned to him with such desperate need in her eyes that it had cracked something in his chest. They'd barely made it to the bedroom. It had been desperate, almost violent. All the words they couldn't say poured into touches that bruised and claimed and begged. Afterward, Lena had cried again, this time pressed against his chest while he held her in the dark and wondered when they'd become strangers sharing a bed. 2 weeks later, she'd moved into the guest room. 1 month after that, he'd filed for divorce. Adrian's hand shook as he closed the laptop. The scotch burned going down, but it didn't touch the cold spreading through his chest. The baby could be mine. The possibility consumed every other thought. If he was the father, then Lena had been pregnant when they divorced. She'd known, or suspected, and hadn't told him. Had let him walk away. Was living in poverty rather than come to him for help. Either because she was terrified of his reaction, or because she didn't want him anywhere near their child. Both options made him feel sick. His phone rang. Adrian glanced at the screen. His mother. He let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message that followed. Adrian, darling, I'm hearing the most disturbing rumors about you harassing some poor pregnant woman at Westfield Plaza. Please tell me this isn't true, and please, for the love of everything holy, tell me it's not Lena. We got rid of her for a reason. Don't make me regret supporting your decision to divorce that opportunistic little... He deleted the message mid-sentence. Victoria Moretti had never approved of his marriage. Old money didn't mix with charity case orphans, she'd said. Girls like Lena were fine for affairs, but marriage. That required breeding, pedigree, the right connections. Adrian had married Lena anyway. The only time in his life he'd directly defied his mother, and then he'd proven her right by failing to make it work. His phone buzzed again. This time, a text from an unknown number. Stop having your people follow Lena. If I see your security team again, I'm filing a restraining order. Miles Bennett. Adrian stared at the message, then typed back, if the baby is mine, I have a right to be involved. The response came within seconds. You have the right to absolutely nothing. You're her EX. Accept it. I can't, not until I know. Then ask her. Not your investigators, not your lawyers, her, like a human being. Adrian's thumb hovered over the keyboard. Then, she won't talk to me, can't imagine why. /S, what does she want? There was a longer pause this time. When the reply came, it was more measured. She wants to be left alone. She wants to raise her baby in peace. She wants to not have panic attacks every time she sees a black SUV because she's afraid her controlling ex-husband is stalking her. The words hit like bullets. Adrian read them 3 times, feeling each one land. I'm not trying to control her. I just need answers. Then respect her boundaries. Make a request through proper channels. Give her time. Stop cornering her in public places and demanding things you're not entitled to. Jesus Christ, you're supposed to be some kind of business genius. Where's that strategic thinking when it comes to basic human decency? Adrian wanted to argue, wanted to defend himself. But Miles was right. Everything he'd done today was exactly wrong. Confronting Lena in public, demanding answers, sending security to follow her. The same controlling behavior that had driven her away in the first place. He typed carefully, "How do I make this right?" "You don't. Not overnight. Maybe not ever." "Then what do I do?" Another pause. "Back off. All the way. Delete whatever surveillance files your people compiled. Stop following her. Stop showing up. Stop trying to force this." And then? "Wait, if Lena decides you deserve to know about the baby, she'll tell you. On her timeline. Not yours. What if she decides I don't deserve to know? Then that's her choice. And you'll have to live with it." Adrian stared at the screen. Everything in him revolted against the idea of stepping back, of surrendering control, of letting Lena make decisions that affected his potential future without his input. But that same controlling instinct was what had destroyed them in the first place. "Tell her I'm sorry. For today. For everything. Tell her yourself. When she's ready to hear it. If she's ever ready." The conversation ended there. Adrian set down the phone and returned to the window, the city lights blurring again as the scotch worked its way through his system. For 3 months, he told himself the divorce was the right choice, the clean break, the logical conclusion to a marriage that had become more warfare than partnership. But seeing Lena today, pregnant, vulnerable, protected by another man, had shattered every lie he'd told himself. He hadn't wanted the divorce. He'd been terrified of the intimacy she demanded, the emotional availability she deserved. So he'd chosen the coward's way out, filed papers and convinced himself it was mercy. And now she was out there, possibly carrying his child, living on barely enough to survive, surrounded by people who actually showed up when she needed them. While he sat alone in an empty penthouse, lord of an empire that suddenly felt completely worthless. Adrian pulled out his phone again, opened his contacts, stared at Lena's name for a long moment before composing a text he'd probably regret. "I know you don't want to hear from me. I know I have no right to ask anything. But please, just tell me one thing. Is there any possibility the baby is mine?" He hit send before he could second guess it. The response came almost instantly. "Stop contacting me." "I mean it, Adrian." His heart sank, but he tried again. "I won't push. I won't demand. I just need to know if I should hope." This time, the pause stretched longer. Adrian watched the 3 typing dots appear and disappear, appear again. Then, "Go to hell." Not a yes, not a no, which meant there was a chance. Adrian closed his eyes, leaning his forehead against the cool glass. Around him, the penthouse was silent except for the faint hum of climate control and the distant wail of sirens far below. He'd built an empire on calculated risks and strategic moves. But this was different. This was his ex-wife, possibly pregnant with his child, hating him with the intensity of someone he deeply hurt. And for the first time in his carefully controlled life, Adrian Moretti had absolutely no idea what to do next, except wait, and hope that Lena's hatred wasn't strong enough to keep him from his child. If the baby was his, please let it be mine. The prayer surprised him. Adrian didn't believe in higher powers or cosmic justice, but standing in the dark, staring at his own reflection in the glass, he found himself hoping anyway, because if the baby wasn't his, then he'd lost Lena for nothing. And if it was, then he had one last chance to become the man she'd needed him to be all along. The restraining order arrived by courier at 9:47 a.m. on a Thursday morning, delivered to Adrian's corner office with the same efficiency as his usual correspondence. Marcus placed it on the mahogany desk without comment, though his expression said everything his silence didn't. Adrian read it twice, then a third time, the legal language blurring together into a single, damning message. Stay away from Lena Vale. Minimum distance of 500 feet. No contact via phone, email, text, or third parties. Violation subject to arrest and prosecution. Miles Bennett's signature sat at the bottom, sharp and decisive as a blade. "He actually did it," Adrian said, his voice flat. Marcus shifted his weight. "You did send security to her apartment building 3 times in 4 days, sir. I was making sure she was safe." She has a lawyer who disagrees with that interpretation. Adrian set the papers down carefully, fighting the urge to crumple them. Get our legal team on this. I want it challenged. Sir? Marcus's tone carried a warning. With respect, fighting a protective order from a pregnant woman you publicly confronted isn't good optics, especially not with the board meeting next week. I don't care about optics. You should. Your mother's already calling for an emergency session to discuss your erratic behavior. Half the board thinks you're having a breakdown. The other half thinks you're being blackmailed. Marcus paused. Fighting this order will only make it worse. Adrian's jaw clenched. So I'm supposed to just accept it? Let her shut me out completely? You could try respecting her boundaries. The words hung in the air between them. Adrian's hands fisted on the desk, but he couldn't argue. Because Marcus was right. Because Miles was right. Because everyone except him seemed to understand what he'd been too blind to see. He'd lost Lena the moment he'd started treating her like a problem to be managed instead of a person to be loved. Fine. The word tasted like defeat. No more surveillance. No contact. Pull everyone back. Marcus nodded. And the restraining order? Let it stand. Adrian's voice was hollow. If that's what she needs to feel safe from me, then so be it. After Marcus left, Adrian sat in the expensive leather chair that suddenly felt like a throne in an empty kingdom. Through the windows, the city sprawled beneath him. Millions of people living lives he'd never cared about, building empires and families and futures while he'd been too busy conquering markets to notice his own marriage dying. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Thank you for backing off. It means more than you know. M. Miles. Still monitoring the situation. Still protecting Lena in all the ways Adrian had failed to. Adrian typed back before he could stop himself. Is she okay? The reply took several minutes. Define okay. She's healthy. The baby's healthy. But she cried for 2 hours after the mall incident. Had nightmares about you showing up at her apartment? Is that the kind of okay you mean? Each word was a knife. Adrian closed his eyes, nausea rolling through him. I never meant to scare her. Intent doesn't erase impact. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're still thinking about what you want, what you need, your rights, your feelings. Have you spent even 5 minutes considering what this is like for her? The accusation landed like a physical blow. Adrian stared at the screen, throat tight. Tell me. Why should I? Because I'm asking, because I want to understand, because maybe if I know what she's going through, I can what? Fix it? Control the situation? Make her forgive you? Jesus, you really don't get it. Then help me get it. The typing indicator appeared and disappeared several times. Finally, she's exhausted. Working part-time while pregnant because she won't take money from you out of pride. She's scared about being a single mother, scared about money, scared about whether she's strong enough to do this alone. And now she's scared of you, the man she used to love, the man who was supposed to protect her. You've become one more thing she has to fear. How's that for understanding? Adrian's chest constricted. He could see it too clearly. Lena lying awake in some cramped apartment, one hand on her belly, wondering how she'd afford diapers and daycare. Jumping at every sound, afraid it might be him coming to make demands she wasn't ready to face. Living in fear because of him. What can I do? Nothing. That's the point. You can't fix this with money or power or force. The only thing you can do is leave her alone and hope that someday, maybe, she'll be ready to talk to you. On her terms, not yours. And if she's never ready, then you live with it. You let her raise the baby, if it's even yours, without you. You accept that some things can't be controlled, some bridges can't be rebuilt, and some consequences are permanent. Adrian read the words 3 times, feeling each one settle like stones in his chest. The baby. Is it mine? I don't know, but you're her friend. She must have told you. Even if I knew, I wouldn't tell you. That's her story to share, not mine. I have a right. You have no rights where she's concerned. You gave those up when you divorced her. The sooner you accept that, the sooner you can stop making this worse. Adrian wanted to argue, wanted to demand, wanted to use every tool in his considerable arsenal to force answers from people who didn't owe him a damn thing. But Miles was right. Again. If I wrote her a letter, no contact means no contact. I just want to explain, She doesn't want your explanations. She wants to be left alone. For how long? As long as it takes. The conversation ended there. Adrian set down the phone and stood, moving to the window that overlooked the city. Somewhere out there, Lena was living a life that didn't include him, making decisions about their potential child without his input, building a future he wasn't part of, and there was nothing, absolutely nothing, he could do about it. For a man who'd spent his entire adult life in control, the helplessness was suffocating. 3 weeks passed in a special kind of hell. Adrian threw himself into work with manic focus, taking meetings he'd normally delegate and reviewing contracts that didn't need his attention. Anything to avoid the empty penthouse. Anything to silence the thoughts that spiraled darker with each passing day. The board meeting was brutal. His mother sat at the head of the table in her severe Chanel suit, ice blue eyes cataloging every flaw in his presentation about the Singapore expansion. When he stumbled over a projected revenue figure, something that had never happened before, her smile was sharp as a scalpel. "Perhaps," Victoria said sweetly, "we should table this discussion until Adrian is feeling more focused." Translation: until he got his personal life under control and stopped embarrassing the family name. "The projections are solid," Adrian said, voice clipped. "The Singapore office will be operational by Q3 with an expected ROI of..." "We're not concerned about Singapore." His mother's interruption was surgical. "We're concerned about you, this erratic behavior, the incident at the mall, the restraining order." Her pause was perfectly calculated. "The rumors about your ex-wife." Every head at the table swiveled toward Adrian. He felt their judgment like physical weight. These men and women who'd watched him build an empire, now wondering if he was losing his mind over a failed marriage. "My personal life is separate from my professional responsibilities." "Is it?" Victoria leaned forward. "Because from where I'm sitting, your personal life is affecting your judgment. You've been distracted, making mistakes, missing details you'd normally catch, all because you can't accept that some marriages aren't meant to last." "Mother," "We gave you time to grieve the divorce, but this obsession with Lena is unhealthy, damaging, to you, to this company, to the Moretti name." Her voice softened, became almost gentle. Almost. "Let her go, darling. Find someone suitable. Start fresh. You're a Moretti. Act like it." Adrian's hands clenched beneath the table. "The board called this meeting to discuss Singapore, not my personal life. The two are connected when your personal choices threaten company stability." His mother's smile was pure poison. "Several board members have expressed concern about your capacity to lead during this difficult time. Perhaps a temporary leave of absence." "No." Adrian stood, and 20 pairs of eyes tracked the movement. "I'm not taking a leave of absence. I'm not stepping down. And I'm not discussing my personal life in a board meeting." He gathered his papers with deliberate calm. "The Singapore expansion proceeds as planned. If anyone has concerns about my leadership, they can address them directly. Otherwise, this meeting is adjourned." He walked out before anyone could respond, Marcus falling into step behind him. "That went well," Marcus said dryly. "She's trying to force me out." "She's worried about you." Adrian shot him a look. "Victoria Moretti doesn't worry. She strategizes." "Maybe it's both." They rode the elevator in silence. Adrian's phone buzzed, an email from his mother's assistant scheduling a private family discussion for tomorrow morning. He deleted it without reading past the subject line. "Sir," Marcus said carefully, "perhaps she has a point about taking time to..." "Don't. You haven't slept more than 4 hours a night in 3 weeks. You're losing weight. Your assistant says you've canceled personal appointments, ignored your trainer, stopped." "I said don't!" Adrian's voice was ice. "I'm handling it." "Are you?" The elevator doors opened. Adrian stepped out into the underground garage where his car waited, Marcus's question hanging unanswered in the air between them. Because the truth was, he wasn't handling it. He was drowning. Every day that passed without word from Lena felt like suffocating slowly, and the not knowing was killing him by inches. Was she okay? Was the baby his? Did she think about him at all, or had she erased him completely from her life? Adrian climbed into the back seat of the town car and his driver pulled smoothly into traffic. Through the tinted windows, the city slid past. Anonymous faces living anonymous lives. free from the kind of pain that came from loving someone you'd destroyed through your own arrogance. His phone buzzed, a text from Miles. "She's in the ER." Adrian's heart stopped. His fingers shook as he typed back, "What happened? Is she okay?" "The baby—" "Calm down. She's fine. Dehydration and stress. They're keeping her overnight for observation." "Which hospital?" "No." "Miles, tell me which hospital." "You have a restraining order. You can't be here." "I don't care about the restraining order. If she doesn't need you. She needs rest and fluids and to not have any more stress. Which is why you're staying away." Adrian wanted to scream. Wanted to order his driver to every hospital in the city until he found her. Wanted to tear through whatever obstacles stood between him and making sure Lena was okay. But Miles was right. His presence would only make things worse. "Is someone with her?" "I'm here." "She's not alone." "The baby?" "Heartbeat strong. Everything looks good. The doctor says she just needs to take better care of herself." Relief flooded through Adrian so intensely his hands shook. He leaned back against the leather seat, eyes closed, breathing carefully through the panic that had seized his chest. "Thank you for telling me. I almost didn't. But I figured you'd find out anyway and do something stupid. This way, you know she's okay, and you stay away like you're supposed to. I want to help. She shouldn't be working if it's making her sick. You could respect her choices. She wants to work, wants to take care of herself, wants to prove she doesn't need you or your money. Let her have that dignity. Even if it's hurting her, she's a grown woman. She gets to make her own mistakes." Adrian stared at the phone. Everything in him rebelled against the idea of standing by while Lena worked herself into exhaustion. But what alternative did he have? Force money on her? Manipulate her situation? Control her choices for her own good? That's what had destroyed them in the first place. "Will you at least tell her?" Adrian stopped, deleting the message. Started again. "Never mind. Tell her what?" "Nothing. Doesn't matter. Say it." Adrian's throat was tight. "Tell her I'm glad she's okay, and that I'm sorry. For everything." Several minutes passed before Miles responded. "I'll consider it. When she's feeling better. When it won't upset her." "Okay." "Adrian?" "Yeah?" "You're doing the right thing, staying away. It's hard, but it's right. Keep doing it." The conversation ended. Adrian sat in the moving car, watching the city lights blur past, feeling more alone than he'd ever felt in his life. Lena was in the hospital because of stress. Stress he'd caused. First by divorcing her, then by confronting her publicly, then by sending security to follow her. Every choice he'd made had added weight to her shoulders until her body couldn't carry it anymore. He'd done that. "Sir?" His driver's voice came through the intercom. "Where are we going?" Adrian opened his mouth to say home, then closed it, because the penthouse was just another empty space filled with expensive things that meant nothing. Another monument to success that felt like failure. "Drive," he said. "Anywhere. I don't care." They drove for hours. Through downtown, past the waterfront, into neighborhoods Adrian had never bothered to notice. Places where people lived in small houses with small yards, where lights glowed warm in windows and families gathered around dinner tables. Lives he'd never wanted, never understood, until Lena had shown him glimpses of what it could mean to have someone to come home to build something more meaningful than profit margins and market dominance. And then he'd thrown it away because he didn't know how to balance empire and intimacy, because vulnerability felt like weakness, because loving her completely would have meant letting her see every broken, damaged part of him he'd spent a lifetime hiding. So he'd chosen control instead, safety instead of risk, and lost the only thing that had ever really mattered. His phone buzzed again. Not Miles this time. An unknown number. "This is Lena. Miles gave me your messages. I'm fine. The baby's fine. Please stop worrying and move on with your life." Adrian's heart hammered. She'd contacted him, directly. Despite the restraining order, despite her anger, she'd reached out. "I can't move on. Not until I know." The response was immediate. "Know what?" "If the baby is mine." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "Does it matter? Of course it matters. If I'm going to be a father..." "You're not going to be anything. Even if the baby is yours, you don't get to suddenly show up and play parent. You left. You made that choice. Live with it. Lena, please. I know I don't deserve answers, but you're right, you don't deserve them. But I'm going to tell you anyway, because I'm tired of this hanging over both of us. Adrian stopped breathing, stared at the screen, waiting. The baby is yours. 24 weeks. Conceived the night you came home, and the night 2 weeks before I moved into the guest room. I found out a month after you filed for divorce. The world tilted. Adrian read the words again. 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 The baby is yours. He was going to be a father. Lena had been pregnant for months, alone, working, struggling, carrying his child while he'd been too blind and too proud to see past his own pain. Why didn't you tell me? Because you made it clear you didn't want this, didn't want me, didn't want the life we were building, so I let you go. But a baby? Lena, I would never have filed if I'd known. Exactly. And I didn't want to be the obligation that trapped you. I didn't want you staying out of duty. I wanted you to want to stay. You didn't. So I made my choice. Adrian's eyes burned. He typed with shaking fingers. What choice? To do this alone. To raise our child without you. To build a life that doesn't include a father who resents us for existing. I could never resent. You resented me. For needing too much. For wanting more than you could give. For not being satisfied with the scraps of attention you threw my way between board meetings and business trips. Why would a child be any different? The accusation hit home because it was true. Every word. He had resented her needs, had seen her requests for time and attention as demands on his already stretched resources, had treated their marriage like another obligation to manage instead of the foundation of his life. I was wrong. Yes, you were. Can I see you? No, Lena, please, we need to talk about this. About the baby. We don't need to do anything. I'm telling you about the baby because you kept pushing. But that doesn't change the fundamental fact. I don't want you in my life. I don't want you showing up. I don't want your money or your guilt or your sudden interest in being a father. I want to be left alone. I can't do that. It's my child too. Biologically, yes. In every other way that matters? No, that's not fair. Life isn't fair, Adrian. You taught me that. Now I'm teaching it back to you. Adrian's chest was so tight he could barely breathe. He stared at the screen, mind racing through arguments and pleas and demands. But they all died before reaching his fingers. Because Lena was right. He'd forfeited his rights when he'd chosen the empire over her, when he'd filed those papers, when he'd reduced their relationship to a problem that needed solving instead of a partnership worth fighting for. And now she was giving him exactly what he'd wanted, freedom. It felt like death. Can I at least help financially? The hospital bills, your apartment, baby supplies. I don't want your money. Our child deserves a father who actually wants to be there, not a checkbook with guilt attached. I do want to be there. Now. You want to be there now. Where were you when I needed you? Where were you when I was crying myself to sleep every night? Where were you when I begged you to just see me? Adrian had no answer, because he'd been in Singapore, in London, in his office, anywhere but where she needed him to be. I'm sorry. I know. I know you're sorry, but sorry doesn't change the past. It doesn't erase the hurt, and it doesn't make me trust you with something as important as our child. So what do I do? The question hung there for a long time. Adrian watched the screen, hoping for an answer that would give him a path forward, a way to fix this, a strategy that would win her back. When Lena's response finally came, it wasn't what he expected. You let me go. You respect my boundaries. You stop trying to force your way back into my life. And maybe, when the baby comes, if you've proven you can actually respect what I need instead of what you want, we can talk about supervised visits. Maybe. Supervised visits. Like he was a threat, a danger to his own child. The unfairness of it burned. But beneath the anger was the terrible awareness that maybe she was right. Maybe he couldn't be trusted. Not yet. Not when he was still thinking in terms of rights and control instead of relationships and respect. Okay. I'll stay away. I'll respect your boundaries. I won't push. But Lena, when the baby comes, I want to be there. Not because I have a right to, because I want to be a father, a real one. Not perfect, but present. Will you at least think about that? Another long pause, then, I'll think about it. That's all I can promise. That's enough. It had to be, because it was all he had. Thank you for telling me. About the baby. You would have found out eventually. Better this way than having you show up at the delivery room uninvited. The image made Adrian flinch. He probably would have done exactly that. Take care of yourself, both of you. We will. The conversation ended. Adrian sat in the back seat of his car, tears burning tracks down his face that he didn't bother to wipe away. He was going to be a father, and the mother of his child hated him. Both truths settled into his chest, taking root there. One bringing hope, the other bringing pain. Together they formed a knot of complicated emotion he had no idea how to untangle, but Miles's words echoed in his mind. You could try respecting her boundaries, so that's what he would do. Step back, stay away. Let Lena have the space she needed to heal from the damage he'd caused. And hope, desperately, painfully hope, that when their child came into the world, she'd give him a chance to be the father he should have been the husband all along. Sir? His driver's voice was gentle. Are you all right? Adrian wiped his face, pulled himself together through sheer force of will. I'm fine. Take me home. He wasn't fine. He was breaking apart. But he'd learned to hide that well enough that no one could tell, except maybe Lina, who'd seen through him from the very beginning, and loved him anyway, until he'd given her no choice but to stop. The penthouse became a prison of Adrian's own making. Every morning he woke to silence. Every night he returned to emptiness. The spaces Lena had once occupied, her reading chair by the window, her side of the closet, the corner of the bathroom counter where she'd kept her skincare products, remained untouched, preserved like exhibits in a museum dedicated to his failures. He kept his promise. No contact, no surveillance, no midnight drives past her apartment building, though the temptation gnawed at him constantly. Instead, he channeled everything into preparing for a future he wasn't sure he'd be part of. He read books on pregnancy and childbirth, studied parenting philosophies, researched the best pediatricians in the city. He opened a trust fund for the baby, transferred money Lena would never accept directly, but that would be there when their child turned 18. He cleared his calendar for late August, 2 weeks before and after her due date, and informed his assistant that he was not to be disturbed for anything short of complete corporate collapse. His mother called it pathetic. His board called it concerning. Marcus called it hopeful. Adrian didn't care what anyone called it. It was all he had. 6 weeks passed, then 8. Adrian marked time by Lena's pregnancy milestones, information he gleaned from the pregnancy apps he'd downloaded. 28 weeks, the baby could open its eyes. 30 weeks, gaining weight rapidly now. 32 weeks, practicing breathing movements. He wondered if Lena felt the baby kick, what names she was considering, whether she'd set up a nursery in her small apartment, whether she thought about him at all, or if she'd successfully erased him from her life the way he'd failed to erase her from his thoughts. The not knowing was torture, but it was the torture he deserved. The call came on a Tuesday evening in late July. Adrian was in his home office reviewing quarterly reports when his personal phone buzzed with an unknown number. He almost ignored it, had trained himself to stop jumping every time the phone rang, stop hoping it might be her. But something made him answer. Hello? Adrian? Lena's voice was tight with pain. I need you to do something for me. He was on his feet instantly. What's wrong? Are you okay? I'm fine. The baby's fine. Just listen. She took a shaky breath. Your mother showed up at my apartment. Adrian's blood ran cold. What? She came to my door, offered me money to disappear. $500,000 to leave the city, give up parental rights, and never contact you again. Lena's voice cracked. She said the baby would ruin your reputation, that I was a gold digger trying to trap you, that she'd make my life hell if I didn't take the deal. Rage detonated in Adrian's chest so violently he couldn't speak. His free hand gripped the edge of the desk hard enough to hurt. Adrian? Are you there? I'm here. His voice was barely controlled. Did she threaten you? Not directly, but the implication was clear. Lena paused. I told her to leave, but she said she'd be back, that she'd find ways to make things difficult. I'm scared, Adrian. Not for me, but for the baby. Your mother is powerful, and if she really wants to... She won't. Adrian's voice was iron. I'll handle this, right now. Where are you? Home. Miles is here, but Adrian, I don't want you to. I'm not coming to you. I'm going to her. Stay inside, lock your doors. I'll call you when it's done. He hung up before she could argue, already moving. Marcus appeared in the doorway as Adrian grabbed his jacket. Sir? My mother just threatened Lena. Adrian's voice was deadly calm. Get the car, now. Marcus didn't ask questions. Within 3 minutes, they were racing through evening traffic toward Victoria Moretti's estate in the hills. Adrian sat in the back seat, hands clenched into fists, breathing carefully through the fury threatening to consume him. His mother had crossed a line. Not just crossed it, obliterated it. And she was about to learn exactly what happened when you threatened the mother of his child. The gates to the estate opened automatically, recognizing his car. Adrian was out before they'd fully stopped, taking the marble steps 2 at a time. He didn't bother knocking, used his key and strode into the foyer where his mother's housekeeper looked up in alarm. Where is she? Mr. Adrian, Where is she? The library, sir. Adrian found Victoria exactly where he expected, seated in her favorite chair with a glass of wine, reading a financial report as if she hadn't just committed an act of psychological warfare against a pregnant woman. She looked up as he entered, one perfectly sculpted eyebrow rising. Adrian, I wasn't expecting you. You went to Lena's apartment. He didn't bother with pleasantries. You offered her money to disappear. Victoria set down her wine glass with deliberate precision. I made her a very generous offer to resolve a complicated situation. She should have taken it. You threatened the mother of my child. I protected my son from a woman trying to trap him with a pregnancy. Victoria's voice was ice. Something you're apparently too emotional to see clearly. Adrian stepped closer, and for the first time in his life, he saw something flicker in his mother's eyes. Not fear. Victoria Moretti didn't do fear. But wariness. Recognition that she'd miscalculated. Let me be absolutely clear, Adrian said, his voice soft and deadly. You will never contact Lena again. You will never go near her apartment. You will never offer her money, make threats, or attempt to interfere in any way with her or our child. Do you understand? Don't be ridiculous. I'm your mother. I'm protecting. You're done protecting me. Adrian's voice cut like a blade. From this moment forward, you have no say in my personal life. None. If you violate this, I will remove you from the board. I will revoke your company's shares. I will cut you out of my life so completely you'll think the divorce with father was friendly by comparison. Victoria stood, drawing herself up to her full height. You wouldn't dare. This family, this company, I built it with my own, and I've tripled its value. The board knows it. The shareholders know it. You have influence, Mother, but I have control. Don't test me on this. They stared at each other across the library, decades of complicated history crackling between them. Victoria had raised him to be ruthless, to prioritize power over everything, to see relationships as transactions and emotions as weaknesses. And now he was using every lesson she'd taught him against her. She's not good enough for you, Victoria said finally, her voice softer, almost hurt. That girl, she came from nothing. She has nothing to offer you except everything I actually needed. Adrian's voice was rough. Love. Partnership. Someone who saw me as more than a Moretti legacy. She offered me a life, Mother. A real one. And I threw it away because I was too much your son to recognize what I had. Sentiment. Victoria spat the word like poison. Your father was sentimental. Look where it got him. Father left because you valued the company more than him, more than your own son. You taught me that power was all that mattered, and I believed you. Adrian's hands unclenched slowly. But you were wrong. Power without someone to share it with is just expensive loneliness. I know because I've been living it for 4 months. Victoria's expression shuddered. So you'll throw away everything we've built for a woman who doesn't even want you anymore? I'm not throwing anything away. I'm choosing something more important. Adrian moved toward the door, then stopped. The baby is due in 6 weeks. Whether Lena lets me be part of their lives or not, that child is my family. And if you can't respect that, then you and I are done, professionally and personally. Adrian, do we understand each other? His mother stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. We understand each other. Good. Adrian pulled out his phone. You're going to call Lena right now and apologize. You're going to tell her you were out of line, that it won't happen again, and that she has nothing to fear from you. Absolutely not. I don't apologize to. Then I'll have my attorney file harassment charges in the morning, and I'll make sure every business publication knows that Victoria Moretti is willing to threaten pregnant women to maintain her image. Adrian's smile was sharp. Your call, Mother. The silence stretched taut. Finally, Victoria picked up her phone with movements that spoke of barely controlled rage. What's her number? Adrian recited it from memory, watched his mother dial, put it on speaker. Lena answered on the third ring, her voice wary. Hello? Ms. Vale, this is Victoria Moretti. His mother's voice was frigid but controlled. I'm calling to, apologize for my behavior this evening. I was out of line. It won't happen again. Okay. Lena sounded shocked. Thank you. You have nothing to fear from me. I give you my word. Victoria's eyes met Adrian's across the room, cold and furious. I hope you and the baby stay healthy. Thank you, Mrs. Moretti. The call ended. Victoria set down her phone with enough force to crack the screen. Happy now? Ecstatic. Adrian turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. The trust fund I set up for the baby? I'm putting your name on it as a co-trustee. Not because I want you involved, but because I want you to have a reason to care whether my child thrives. You spent my whole life teaching me that money talks, so let it speak now. That baby is a Moretti, whether you approve of its mother or not. Start acting like it. He left before she could respond, striding through the house and back to the car where Marcus waited. How did it go, sir? She'll leave Lena alone. Adrian's voice was flat. If she doesn't, I'll destroy her. She knows it. They drove in silence for several minutes. Then Adrian pulled out his phone and texted Lena. It's handled. She won't bother you again, I promise. The response came quickly. Thank you. I didn't know what else to do. You did the right thing calling me. Are you okay? Shaken. But okay. The baby's moving a lot. I think they can sense when I'm stressed. Something warm unfurled in Adrian's chest at the casual they, the easy way she referenced their child. Can I ask you something? Maybe. When you feel the baby kick, what's it like? The pause was longer this time. Adrian held his breath, waiting for her to shut him out. Instead, like butterflies at first. Now it feels like someone's practicing gymnastics against my ribs, weird and uncomfortable and completely amazing all at once. I wish I could feel it. Another pause, then, maybe someday you will, if you keep your promises, if you prove you can be trusted. I will. I am. Whatever it takes, Lena, we'll see. The conversation ended there, but something had shifted. She'd called him, trusted him to handle his mother, shared something intimate about the pregnancy. Small things, maybe, but they felt enormous. Adrian stared at his phone, reading and rereading her messages. The careful maybe of her hope, the cautious we'll see of someone who'd been hurt too many times to believe easily. But she hadn't said no, hadn't shut the door completely. And that tiny opening was more than he dared hope for. 2 weeks later, Adrian's phone rang at 3 a.m. He answered before the second ring, heart pounding. Lena? It's Miles. The lawyer's voice was tight. Lena's in labor, early labor, but her doctor wants her at the hospital. She's asking for you. Adrian was already moving, pulling on clothes with shaking hands. Which hospital? Mercy General, but Adrian, listen to me. She's scared. The baby's 3 weeks early, and she's terrified something's wrong. So when you get here, you need to be calm, supportive, not controlling. Can you do that? Yes. The word came out fierce. I'm leaving now. He made the 20-minute drive in 12, Marcus trailing in a second car. The hospital lobby was nearly empty at this hour, fluorescent lights harsh against the pre-dawn darkness. A nurse directed him to the maternity floor where Miles waited in the hallway outside a private room. She's inside, Miles said quietly. Doctor just examined her. She's dilated to 4 centimeters, contractions every 7 minutes. They're monitoring the baby's heartbeat. And everything looks okay so far, but Lena's panicking. She needs you to not panic with her. Adrian nodded, throat tight. Can I go in? She asked for you, but Adrian? Miles caught his arm. Don't make promises you can't keep. Don't say things just to make her feel better. She needs the truth from you, even if it's hard, especially if it's hard. I understand. Miles stepped aside. Adrian pushed open the door to find Lena in a hospital bed, hooked up to monitors that beeped rhythmically. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, her face pale and drawn. She looked young, vulnerable, terrified, and so beautiful it hurt to breathe. Adrian, her voice cracked. The baby's coming early. What if something's wrong? What if I did something to... Hey! He moved to her bedside, every instinct screaming to touch her, hold her, fix this. But he kept his hands at his sides. Look at me. The doctors are monitoring everything. The baby's heartbeat is strong. You heard that, right? Yes, but 3 weeks early isn't that unusual. Babies come on their own schedule. Adrian pulled up a chair, sitting at her eye level. You've been taking care of yourself, going to all your appointments, doing everything right. This isn't your fault. A contraction hit. Lena gasped, her hand shooting out to grip the bed rail. Adrian watched her breathe through it, watched the pain tighten her features, and felt completely helpless. When it passed, she slumped back against the pillows. I'm scared. I know. This time, he let himself reach out, covering her hand with his. She didn't pull away. But you're strong. Stronger than anyone I've ever met. You're going to get through this. She whispered. We're going to get through this. The correction made his chest tighten. He agreed. Can I stay? Lena's eyes searched his face. You want to? More than anything. Even though it's going to be messy and painful and nothing like what you're used to controlling? Especially because of that. Adrian squeezed her hand gently. I'm not here to control anything, Lena. I'm here to support you, however you need me. Another contraction built. This time, when Lena reached for something to hold on to, Adrian was there. She gripped his hand hard enough to hurt, breathing through the pain while he murmured encouragement he wasn't sure she could hear over her own gasping. The hours blurred together. Contractions came closer, stronger, relentless. Lena walked the halls when the doctor suggested movement might help. She labored in the shower. She cried and cursed and begged for it to be over. And through all of it, Adrian stayed. He didn't offer solutions or take control. He just followed her lead, held her hand when she needed it, gave her space when she pulled away, brought ice chips and helped her to the bathroom and told her over and over that she was doing amazing. Around noon, the doctor checked her progress. 8 centimeters. Won't be long now. Lena's face crumpled. I can't. Adrian, I can't do this anymore. Yes, you can. He brushed sweat-dampened hair from her forehead. You're almost there. Just a little bit longer. Easy for you to say. You're not... Another contraction stole her words. This one was different, stronger, accompanied by pressure that made her cry out. The doctor returned, checked quickly. It's time. Lena, on the next contraction, I need you to push. Terror flashed across Lena's face. Adrian, I'm right here. He positioned himself beside her, one hand in hers, the other supporting her back. I'm not going anywhere. You've got this. What followed was the most intense, terrifying, beautiful thing Adrian had ever witnessed. Lena bore down with strength he hadn't known existed, her whole body straining toward a single purpose. Between contractions, she collapsed against him, exhausted and shaking. But each time the pressure built again, she gathered herself and pushed. I can see the head, the doctor announced. One more big push, Lena. You're almost there. I can't. You can. Adrian's voice was fierce in her ear. One more. Just one more. Then you get to meet our baby. Lena looked at him, her eyes wide and terrified and trusting in a way that made his heart stop. Then she turned back to the work of bringing their child into the world. The final push seemed to last forever and no time at all. Then suddenly there was a cry, high and indignant and perfect. The doctor lifted a tiny, squirming body. It's a girl. A girl. They had a daughter. Adrian's vision blurred. He watched the doctor place their baby on Lena's chest, watched Lena's face transform as she looked down at the tiny person she'd just brought into the world, watched his daughter open her eyes, dark and unfocused, and stare up at her mother. Oh, Lena breathed. Oh, baby girl. Hi. Hi, sweetheart. She was perfect, impossibly small, with dark hair plastered to her head and Lena's nose and lungs that clearly worked perfectly based on the volume of her cries. Adrian couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't process the enormity of what he was witnessing. This was his daughter, his family, the most important thing he'd ever been part of creating. Adrian? Lena's voice was soft. Do you want to hold her? He looked up, found Lena watching him with an expression he couldn't read. Are you sure? She's yours too. Lena's eyes were wet. You should meet your daughter. The nurse showed him how to support the baby's head and neck, then carefully transferred the tiny bundle into his arms. Adrian froze, terrified of doing something wrong, but his daughter settled against his chest, her cries quieting, one impossibly small hand curling into a fist against his shirt. She weighed nothing. She weighed everything. She was smaller than he'd imagined and more real than anything he'd ever held. Hi, he whispered, voice breaking. Hi, sweetheart. I'm your dad. I'm so sorry I wasn't there before, but I'm here now. I promise I'm here now. His daughter made a small sound, her face scrunching. Adrian felt something crack open in his chest. Some barrier he'd built brick by brick over a lifetime, crumbling in the face of this tiny person who didn't care about his empire or his power or his carefully constructed control. She just needed him to show up, to be present, to love her. And in that moment, Adrian understood what Lena had been asking for all along. Not grand gestures or expensive gifts or elaborate solutions, just presence, just him, fully there, fully committed, fully vulnerable. The thing he'd been too afraid to give. She's beautiful, he said, looking up at Lena. Just like her mother. Lena's expression softened. She has your chin. Poor kid. A laugh escaped Lena, watery but genuine. I think it's cute. They stared at each other across the hospital room, their daughter between them, and Adrian felt the weight of everything unsaid hanging in the air. Apologies and explanations and desperate hopes for a future he had no right to claim. But Miles's words echoed, "Don't make promises you can't keep." So Adrian just stood there, holding their daughter, and let the moment speak for itself. Eventually, the nurse needed to take the baby for measurements and tests. Adrian surrendered her reluctantly, watching as they weighed and measured and checked reflexes. 6 pounds, 4 ounces. 19 inches long. Perfectly healthy despite being early. A miracle. Lena was moved to a recovery room. Miles appeared with flowers and congratulations, hugging Lena carefully while giving Adrian a look that said, "Don't screw this up." Other nurses came and went, checking vitals and helping Lena try to nurse and explaining postpartum care in clinical detail that made Adrian's head spin. Through it all, he stayed. Sat in the chair beside Lena's bed and watched his daughter sleep in her bassinet, watched Lena doze between feeding attempts, watched the two of them, his family, and felt something he hadn't let himself feel in months. Hope. Around dinner time, Lena woke and looked over at him. You're still here. I told you I would be. I know, but I didn't really believe you'd stay this long. She shifted carefully, wincing at the movement. Thank you for being here, for helping. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. Adrian leaned forward. Lena, I know I don't have the right to ask for anything, but can I ask you one question? She tensed. What? What's her name? Lena's expression softened. I haven't decided yet. I wanted to meet her first. She glanced at the bassinet where their daughter slept. What do you think? Does she look like a name to you? Adrian stood and moved to the bassinet, studying his daughter's tiny face. She'd stopped crying, her features relaxed in sleep. Peaceful. Perfect. Maya, he said softly. It means miracle, which is what she is. When he looked back at Lena, tears were streaming down her face. What's wrong? That was my mother's name, Lena whispered, before she died. I've been trying to find a way to honor her, but nothing felt right until her voice broke. How did you know? I didn't. Adrian's throat was tight. I just looked at her and that's what came to mind. Lena stared at him for a long moment. Then she smiled, watery but real. Maya Moretti. It's perfect. Maya Vale, Adrian corrected gently. She should have your name. You're the one who did all the work. Maya Vale Moretti, Lena said. Both of us. Equal. The word hit Adrian like a physical blow. Equal. Partnership. Everything he'd failed to give her in their marriage, she was offering to their daughter. And maybe, just maybe, offering him a second chance he didn't deserve. Thank you, he said roughly, for letting me be here, for letting me meet her, for... Don't. Lena held up a hand. Don't thank me like I did you a favor. She's your daughter. You have a right to meet her. But you could have shut me out. You almost did. I wouldn't have blamed you. I know. Lena's eyes held his. But watching you hold her, seeing how you looked at her, maybe I was wrong. Maybe you can be the father she deserves. I want to be. The words came out fierce. More than I've ever wanted anything. I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you. But Lena, I swear on our daughter's life, I will spend the rest of mine proving I can do better. Lena was quiet for a long moment, then, Okay, you can try. Not all at once. Not unsupervised at first, but we can start. Slowly. And if you prove you mean it, if you actually follow through, she took a shaky breath, then maybe we can figure out how to co-parent. Maybe even be friends eventually. It wasn't everything. It wasn't reconciliation or forgiveness or happily ever after, but it was a door opening, a path forward, a chance. And Adrian would take it. Adrian learned very quickly that showing up meant more than just being physically present. It meant the 3 a.m. texts when Maya wouldn't stop crying and Lena was so exhausted she couldn't think straight. It meant showing up at her apartment, after asking permission first, with groceries and takeout because she hadn't eaten a proper meal in 2 days. It meant sitting in her cramped living room folding tiny onesies while she nursed their daughter, keeping his eyes carefully averted to give her privacy she shouldn't have to ask for. It meant doing the work without being asked, without being praised, without keeping score. The first week was the hardest. Maya had colic, screaming for hours every evening, no matter what anyone tried. Lena looked like she was barely surviving, dark circles under her eyes and milk stains on every shirt. Miles was there constantly, helping in ways that made Adrian's jaw clench with jealousy, until he forced himself to see it differently. Miles wasn't competition, he was support Lena desperately needed. And Adrian's job wasn't to replace him or resent him. It was to add to that support, not demand exclusive access. So he swallowed his pride and asked Miles to teach him how to swaddle properly, how to hold Maya during her screaming fits so Lena could shower, how to warm bottles and test temperature and burp a baby who seemed determined to spit up on everything. You're doing better than I expected, Miles admitted one evening, watching Adrian pace the living room with a wailing Maya against his shoulder. Most guys would have given up by now. I'm not most guys. Adrian adjusted his hold, remembering the technique Miles had shown him. And she's my daughter. I'm not giving up. Even though Lena barely talks to you, even though you're still essentially a visitor in your own kid's life? Even though. Adrian met Miles's eyes. I earned that distance, now I'm earning my way back. Miles studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Good. Because if you hurt her again, I'll make the restraining order look friendly. Understood. Maya's cries finally subsided to hiccups. Adrian kept pacing, kept the rhythmic bounce that seemed to soothe her. Through the bathroom door, he could hear the shower running, Lena's first in 3 days. He'd promised her 20 uninterrupted minutes. He was determined to deliver. She used to talk about you, you know, Miles said quietly. Before the divorce. She'd tell me about these moments when you'd come home late and just hold her, not talking, just being together. She said those moments made all the lonely ones worth it. Adrian's throat tightened. I didn't know that. You didn't ask. Miles stood, grabbing his jacket. That's the difference, Adrian. Lena never needed you to be perfect. She just needed you to pay attention, to notice when she was struggling, to care enough to ask. I'm asking now. I know. That's why I'm giving you a chance. Miles headed for the door, then paused. She's going to her 6-week checkup on Thursday. After that, she's cleared to leave the house more. Maybe take her somewhere. Not fancy. Somewhere she can relax without worrying about Maya screaming in public. Like where? There's a park near here. Lake Vista. It has a walking path and benches, and it's quiet during the day. She used to go there all the time when you were married. Said it was the only place she could think. The information landed like a punch. Adrian had never known Lena had a place she escaped to, had never thought to ask where she went when she said she needed air. "Thank you," he said, "for telling me." "Don't thank me. Just don't waste the information." Miles left, the door clicking softly behind him. Adrian stood in the middle of Lena's small living room, cradling their daughter, and felt the weight of everything he'd never noticed pressing down on his shoulders. How many times had Lena needed him, and he'd been too busy to see? How many small moments had he missed because he was focused on the empire instead of the woman trying to build a life with him? The shower stopped. A few minutes later, Lena emerged in clean clothes, her wet hair combed back, looking more human than she had in days. "Did she stop crying?" Lena's voice was hopeful. "About 5 minutes ago. I think she finally wore herself out." Lena crossed to him, peering down at Maya's sleeping face. This close, Adrian could smell her shampoo, the same brand she'd used when they were married. The familiarity of it made his chest ache. "You're getting good at this," Lena said softly. "I'm trying. I know." She looked up at him, and for the first time in months, there was something other than anger or pain in her eyes. Something that might have been appreciation. "Thank you for being here, for not making me ask." "You shouldn't have to ask." Adrian carefully transferred Maya to Lena's arms. "She's my responsibility, too." "Responsibility?" Lena repeated the word like she was tasting it. "Is that what she is to you?" "No." Adrian's voice was fierce. "She's everything. You both are. I know I don't have the right to say that, but it's true." Lena was quiet for a moment, swaying gently with Maya. Then, "Miles said you've been asking questions about me, about what I need. I should have asked years ago." "Yes, you should have." She moved to the couch, settling carefully. "But you're asking now. That counts for something." Adrian sat in the chair across from her, maintaining the distance she seemed to need. "Miles mentioned you used to go to Lake Vista Park." Lena's head snapped up. "He told you that? Is that okay? I just thought maybe when you're cleared to go out more, if you wanted company." Adrian stopped, reading her expression. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have assumed." "No, it's..." Lena took a breath. "Lake Vista was my place, where I went when our marriage was falling apart and I needed to escape. I'd sit by the lake and try to figure out what I was doing wrong. Why you didn't love me anymore." The words were knives. "Lena, let me finish." Her voice was steady but strained. "I'd watch other couples walking together, holding hands, being present with each other. And I'd wonder what they had that we didn't, what I was missing that made you choose everything else over me. You weren't missing anything. It was me. All me. I know that now." Lena looked down at Maya. "But back then, I thought if I just tried harder, needed less, demanded nothing, maybe you'd notice me. Maybe you'd come home and actually see me instead of looking through me to whatever business crisis was happening." Adrian's hands clenched on the armrests. "I saw you. I just didn't know how to..." He stopped, forced himself to be honest. "That's a lie. I saw you. I knew you were unhappy. I just convinced myself that providing for you was the same as loving you, that success was what mattered, and you'd eventually understand that. I never needed your success, Adrian. I needed you. I know. I finally know." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "And I know I can't fix the past. Can't take back all the times I chose wrong. But I can choose differently now. So if you want to go to Lake Vista, I'll go with you. Not to intrude on your space, but to show you that I'm paying attention, that I care where you find peace, that I want to be part of your life, not a disruption to it." Lena studied him for a long moment. "Okay. Okay. Thursday, after my appointment. If Maya's having a good day, we can go to the park." She paused. "Just to walk, nothing more." "Just to walk," Adrian agreed. Relief flooded through him. "Thank you." Thursday arrived with typical newborn chaos. Maya spit up on 3 outfits before Lena finally got her dressed. The appointment ran late. By the time they made it to Lake Vista Park, it was nearly 3 in the afternoon and Maya was fussy, making the angry grunting sounds that usually preceded a full meltdown. Maybe this was a bad idea, Lena said, jiggling the stroller. She's going to start screaming any minute. So we'll walk fast. Adrian fell into step beside her. Show me your favorite spot before she loses it completely. They walked the path around the lake, Lena pointing out landmarks Adrian had never known existed. The bench where she'd called her best friend from college and cried about their separation. The willow tree where she'd sat during a rainstorm, too numb to care about getting soaked. The dock where she'd thrown her wedding ring, then waded in to retrieve it because she couldn't quite let go. I didn't know you kept it, Adrian said quietly. I didn't. I sold it last month to pay for Maya's crib and changing table. Lena's voice was matter-of-fact. The ring was beautiful, but she needed furniture more than I needed a reminder of what we used to be. Adrian stopped walking. You sold your ring for baby furniture? What else was I supposed to do? I wasn't going to take your money, and I needed... She stopped, reading his expression. Don't look at me like that. Like what? Like I'm some tragic figure you need to rescue. I made choices. I'm living with them. You shouldn't have to live with poverty because you're too proud to accept help from the father of your child. Adrian's voice was careful, controlled. Lena, I set up accounts for you, for Maya. You have access to... I don't want access to your guilt money. Her eyes flashed. I want to know I can take care of my daughter myself, that I'm not dependent on a man who might disappear the moment things get difficult. I'm not going to disappear. You already did once. The accusation hung between them. Adrian wanted to argue, to defend himself, to point out all the ways he was different now. But she was right. He had disappeared. Long before the divorce papers, he'd checked out of their marriage emotionally. You're right, he said instead. I did. And I can't promise that I'll never let you down again, because I'm human and I'll make mistakes. But I can promise that I'm not leaving. Not you, not Maya, not this chance to be part of your lives. Lena started walking again. Words are easy, Adrian. I know. That's why I'm backing them up with action. He caught up to her. I've been clearing my calendar, delegating more. I leave the office at 5 now, even if there's work left, because I finally understand that the work will always be there, but Maya's childhood won't. Neither will these moments with you. She glanced at him, surprised. You're leaving work at 5? Every day for the past 3 weeks. Ask Marcus. Ask my assistant. Hell, ask my mother, who's furious about it. Adrian gave a dry smile. The board thinks I'm having a mental breakdown. They might be right. Or you might be finally getting your priorities straight. That too. They walked in silence for a while, Maya's fussing subsiding as the movement lulled her. The lake reflected the afternoon sun, turning the water into liquid gold. Ducks paddled near the shore, and somewhere in the distance, children laughed on a playground. This was supposed to be our life, Lena said suddenly. When we got married, I imagined us taking walks like this, pushing a stroller together, being a family. Her voice cracked. I used to come here and picture it so clearly, and then I'd go home to an empty penthouse and remember it was just a fantasy. It doesn't have to be. Adrian stopped walking, turned to face her. I know I destroyed what we had. I know I don't deserve another chance. But we have Maya now, and she deserves parents who actually show up for each other. Not for romance or reconciliation, but for partnership. For co-parenting that doesn't feel like warfare. Is that what you want? Partnership? I want whatever you're willing to give. Adrian's voice was raw. If that's friendship, I'll take it. If it's just polite coordination about Maya's schedule, I'll take that too. But Lena, if there's any possibility, any chance at all, that you could eventually forgive me enough to try again, stop. Lena held up a hand. Don't go there. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Okay. Adrian forced himself to breathe through the disappointment. Friendship, then. Can we at least try for that? Lena looked at him for a long moment, then down at Maya, who'd finally fallen asleep in her stroller. I don't know if we can be friends, Adrian. There's too much history, too much hurt. Then what can we be? I don't know yet. She started walking again. But we can figure it out, slowly, with boundaries. And if you cross them, I won't. You don't know that. You crossed every boundary we ever set in our marriage. Because I didn't respect them. Didn't respect you. Adrian matched her pace. I'm learning. It's not natural for me, letting someone else have control. But I'm trying. Try harder. Lena's voice was sharp. Because the moment you slip back into your old patterns, the moment you start treating me like a problem to manage instead of a person to respect, we're done. And I will make sure Maya knows exactly why her father isn't in her life. The threat was clear and fair. Adrian nodded slowly. Understood. They completed the loop around the lake in silence. When they returned to the parking lot, Lena paused before getting into her car. Same time next week? She asked. If Maya's doing okay? Hope flared in Adrian's chest. I'd like that. Just walking, nothing more. Just walking, he agreed. But as he watched her drive away, Maya's car seat carefully secured in the back, Adrian allowed himself to hope for more. Not immediately, not without earning it, but someday. Maybe. The weeks developed a rhythm. Thursday walks at Lake Vista became routine. Adrian showed up at Lena's apartment 3 evenings a week to help with Maya's bedtime routine. He started staying later until one night Lena fell asleep on the couch mid-conversation, and he covered her with a blanket rather than wake her. When he tried to leave, Maya started crying, and Adrian found himself spending the night in Lena's armchair, his daughter asleep on his chest, his back screaming by morning, but his heart fuller than it had been in months. Lena found them that way at dawn, her expression unreadable. You didn't have to stay, she said softly. She needed me. I wasn't going to leave her crying, even though it meant sleeping in a chair. Even though... Adrian carefully transferred Maya to Lena's arms, his muscles protesting the movement. I should go. Let you two have your morning. Adrian? Lena's voice stopped him at the door. Thank you for staying, for showing up, for all of it. You don't have to thank me for being a father. I'm not thanking you for that. I'm thanking you for doing it right. Her eyes were soft. For doing it the way I always hoped you would. The words carried him through the next week. Through a brutal board meeting where his mother tried again to force a vote on his leadership. Through a merger negotiation that required 18-hour days. Through moments when the old Adrian would have sent a text canceling plans and buried himself in work. But he'd made a promise. To Lena, to Maya, to himself. So he left the merger negotiation at 4:30 to make it to Maya's 2-month pediatric appointment. He sat in the waiting room beside Lena, filling out forms and watching other families with their children. When the nurse called Maya's name, he stood with Lena, and together they listened to the doctor explain vaccination schedules and developmental milestones. She's thriving, the doctor said, smiling. 10 pounds, 2 ounces, 95th percentile for length, meeting all her milestones right on schedule. Whatever you two are doing, keep doing it. Walking out of the clinic, Lena was quiet. Adrian glanced over, worried. What's wrong? Nothing. She stopped, adjusting Maya in her arms. The doctor called us you two, like we're a unit, a team. We are, aren't we? I guess we are. Lena looked up at him. That's going to take some getting used to. We have time. Adrian held the car door open for her. No rush. But that evening, everything changed. Adrian's phone rang at 8 p.m. Victoria Moretti's name flashed on the screen. He almost ignored it, but something made him answer. Mother? Adrian. We have a situation. His mother's voice was clipped. The Times is running a story tomorrow morning about you and Lena. They have photos from the park, from the pediatrician's office. They're calling it a secret love child and questioning whether you're fit to lead Moretti International while conducting a scandalous affair with your ex-wife. Adrian's blood ran cold. How did they... Does it matter? The story runs in 6 hours unless you give them something else. A statement, an explanation, something to spin this that doesn't make you look like you've been lying to the board for months. I haven't been lying. You've been secretly co-parenting with your ex-wife without telling anyone. The board is going to lose their minds. The shareholders will demand answers. This could trigger the very vote I've been warning you about. Adrian closed his eyes. What do you want me to do? Issue a statement, brief, professional. Confirm Maya's existence. Confirm co-parenting arrangement. Emphasize that it's amicable and has no impact on your professional responsibilities. Victoria paused. Or you could let me handle it. I have contacts at the Times. I can make this go away. How? By giving them a different story, one that focuses on your stability, your leadership, your commitment to the company. The baby becomes a footnote. Lena becomes irrelevant. Everything goes back to normal. By throwing Lena under the bus, by protecting what matters, the empire you've built, the legacy you're supposed to uphold. Adrian thought about Lena, sleeping in her apartment with no idea her privacy was about to be invaded. Thought about Maya, too young to understand but old enough to be affected by whatever scandal erupted. Thought about the promise he'd made to respect boundaries and show up consistently. "No," he said. "Excuse me?" "I said no. You're not handling this. You're not spinning it, and you're sure as hell not making Lena irrelevant." Adrian's voice was steel. "I'll issue a statement, tonight. My words, not yours." "Adrian, be reasonable." "I am being reasonable. For the first time in my life, I'm choosing people over empire. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to call Lena and warn her before this hits." He hung up before his mother could respond, already dialing Lena's number. She answered on the third ring, voice foggy with sleep. "Adrian, what's wrong?" "I need you to listen carefully. Don't panic." He took a breath. "The Times is running a story about us tomorrow, about Maya. They have photos." Silence. Then, "What kind of photos?" "Nothing inappropriate, just us at the park, at the doctor's office. But they're framing it as a secret, and it's going to be everywhere by morning." "Oh my God," Lena's voice shook. "Adrian, I don't want to be in the news. I don't want photographers following me, reporters asking questions. I know, I'm going to handle it." "How?" "By telling the truth." Adrian paced his penthouse, mind racing. "I'm going to issue a statement confirming everything, Maya's birth, our co-parenting arrangement, all of it. And I'm going to make it very clear that you and Maya are off limits to the press." "Will that work?" "It'll help. And if it doesn't, if reporters show up at your apartment or bother you in any way, you call me immediately. I'll handle it." "Adrian, I mean it, Lena. I'm not letting them make your life hell because of my public profile. This is my responsibility. Let me handle it." She was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Okay, but Adrian, whatever statement you write, show it to me first. I get to approve anything you say about Maya." "Of course." Relief flooded through him. "I'll send you a draft in an hour." "Make it 30 minutes. I'm not sleeping anyway." Adrian drafted the statement 3 times before he got it right. Simple, honest, protective without being aggressive. Statement from Adrian Moretti. "I'm writing to confirm what some of you may have already heard. I'm a father. My daughter Maya was born in July to my ex-wife, Lena Vale. While Lena and I are no longer married, we're committed to co-parenting our daughter together with respect and care. Maya's existence isn't a secret. It's just private. Like any new parent, I've been navigating this massive life change while trying to balance professional responsibilities. I'm incredibly grateful to Lena for her strength, grace, and willingness to build a partnership focused on our daughter's well-being. I'm asking the media to respect our privacy, especially Lena's and Maya's. They didn't choose this public life. I did. And I'll do everything in my power to protect them from unwanted attention. To my colleagues, shareholders, and board members, I understand you may have questions. I'm happy to address them directly, but please know that becoming a father hasn't diminished my commitment to Moretti International. It's strengthened my resolve to build something meaningful that my daughter can be proud of. Thank you for your understanding and respect during this time." He sent it to Lena, held his breath waiting for her response. It came 5 minutes later. "It's perfect. Post it." Adrian published the statement on Moretti International's official channels at 11 p.m. By midnight, it had been picked up by every major business publication. By morning, his phone was exploding with calls from board members, investors, and media outlets requesting interviews. He ignored all of them and drove straight to Lena's apartment. She opened the door looking exhausted, Maya fussing in her arms. "The vultures found my address," she said without preamble. "There are 3 photographers outside. One tried to follow me to the corner store." Fury detonated in Adrian's chest. "Pack a bag. You're leaving." "What?" "You and Maya. Pack essentials. You're staying somewhere safe until this dies down." "Adrian, I can't just leave my apartment." "Yes, you can." He stepped inside, already pulling out his phone. "I have a property outside the city. Private, secure. No one knows about it except Marcus. You'll have space, privacy, everything you need. And if you want Miles there for backup, I'll send a car for him too. Lena stared at him. You're serious? Completely. I told you I'd protect you from this. I meant it. Adrian met her eyes. Please, Lena, let me do this one thing right. She hesitated, then looked down at Maya, who'd finally stopped crying. Okay, but I'm not staying there alone with you. Miles comes or I don't go. Deal, I'll call him now. Within 2 hours, Adrian had everything arranged. Marcus drove them out of the city in an unmarked car, losing the photographers in downtown traffic. The house was an hour north, a converted farmhouse Adrian had bought years ago as an investment and never visited. It was rustic but comfortable, surrounded by acres of land and completely private. Miles arrived 30 minutes after them, looking disgruntled but resigned. This is insane, he muttered, surveying the property. You really own this place and never mentioned it? I own a lot of properties I never mention. Adrian helped Lena carry Maya's portable crib inside. This one seemed useful today. They settled into an awkward routine. Lena took the master bedroom with Maya. Miles claimed the guest room. Adrian insisted he'd stay in town, come out only when needed. But that night, Maya spiked a fever. Lena called him at 2 a.m., voice edged with panic. She's burning up. I gave her infant Tylenol, but it's not coming down. Should I take her to the ER? I don't even know where the nearest hospital is out here. I'm on my way. Don't move. Adrian made the drive in 40 minutes, breaking every speed limit. He found Lena pacing the living room, Maya screaming in her arms, her tiny face flushed and hot. Let me see. Adrian checked Maya's temperature, 101. 2. High, but not dangerous. He called their pediatrician, got after-hours advice, helped Lena give Maya a lukewarm bath to bring the fever down. By 4 a.m., Maya's temperature had dropped to 99.8, and she'd fallen into exhausted sleep. Lena collapsed on the couch, tears streaming down her face. I thought something was really wrong. I thought, hey. Adrian sat beside her, careful to maintain distance. You did everything right. The fever's down. She's okay. I'm a terrible mother. I panicked. I didn't know what to do. You're an amazing mother, and you called for help when you needed it. That's not weakness, Lena. That's strength. She looked at him, eyes red and swollen. Stay. Just tonight, in case it happens again. Are you sure? I'm sure. So Adrian stayed, slept on the couch while Lena dozed in the armchair, both of them keeping vigil over their daughter. When he woke at dawn, Lena was watching him. What? He asked groggily. You stayed. You asked me to. No, I mean really stayed. You didn't try to take over or fix everything or tell me what to do. You just helped, like a partner. Adrian sat up slowly. That's what I'm trying to be. I know. Lena's voice was soft. And it's working. You're different than you used to be. I don't know if it's permanent or if you're just trying really hard right now, but it's different. It's permanent. Adrian's voice was fierce. Losing you, nearly losing the chance to know Maya, it changed something fundamental. I can't go back to who I was even if I wanted to, which I don't. Good. Lena stood, checking on Maya, who slept peacefully in her portable crib. Because that Adrian, the one who chose power over people, he would have issued a different statement, one that protected his image and left me vulnerable. The fact that you didn't do that means something. It means I finally figured out what actually matters. Yeah, Lena smiled, small and tentative. It does. They stayed at the farmhouse for a week while the media frenzy died down. During that time, something shifted. The careful distance Lena had maintained began to soften, not all at once, but in small moments. Like when she asked Adrian's opinion on Maya's sleep schedule, instead of just informing him of decisions she'd made. Or when she fell asleep during a movie and woke up to find him still there, Maya asleep on his chest. Or when she laughed at one of his terrible jokes and didn't seem to realize she'd done it. Small moments, but they built into something that felt almost like trust. On the last night before they returned to the city, Lena found Adrian on the porch, staring out at the stars. Thinking about the Empire? She asked. Thinking about how I would have spent this week a year ago. Adrian glanced over. I would have been in Singapore or London, making deals that don't matter instead of being here for moments that do. Lena sat beside him, careful to leave space between them. Do you miss it? The constant motion, the power plays. Sometimes it's what I know, what I'm good at. Adrian was quiet for a moment. But being here with you and Maya, it feels more real than anything I ever accomplished in a boardroom. Even though we're not together, even though I can't promise we ever will be, even though. He looked at her directly. I don't need promises, Lena. I just need chances, and you've given me more of those than I deserve. She held his gaze for a long moment. Then, my 6-month checkup is next week. After that, I'm cleared for normal activities. That's good. You must be relieved. I am, but it also means I need to start thinking about going back to work, about daycare for Maya, about real life instead of this protective bubble we've been in. Adrian's chest tightened. What do you need from me? I don't know yet. Lena pulled her knees up, wrapping her arms around them. But I think, maybe, I'm ready to talk about something more permanent than this week-to-week arrangement. Like what? Like custody. Like support that doesn't feel like charity. Like being actual co-parents instead of two people nervously orbiting each other. Hope surged through Adrian. I want that, all of it, whatever terms you set. Even if those terms include boundaries, limits on your time, rules about decisions, especially if they include that, because it means you trust me enough to establish a real framework instead of just keeping me at arm's length. Lena smiled slightly. When did you get so good at saying the right thing? When I finally started listening to what you actually needed instead of assuming I knew better. Adrian shifted, resisting the urge to reach for her hand. Thank you for this week, for letting me be here, for showing me what I've been missing. You're welcome. Lena stood, stretching. I should check on Maya. You coming? In a minute. He watched her go inside, heard her soft voice as she talked to their daughter. And Adrian allowed himself to feel something he hadn't felt in nearly a year. Genuine happiness. Not the hollow satisfaction of a successful deal or a board vote won, but real bone-deep contentment that came from being exactly where he was supposed to be. With his daughter. Near the woman he'd loved and lost and was slowly, carefully earning his way back toward. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't reconciliation. It wasn't even forgiveness yet. But it was progress. And for a man who'd spent months in stagnant regret, progress felt like everything. The formal custody agreement sat on Lena's kitchen table like a peace treaty between warring nations. Adrian had his lawyer draft it based on their conversations at the farmhouse, but he'd insisted Lena review it with Miles before signing anything. It's more than fair, Miles admitted, flipping through the pages. Shared custody with you as primary residential parent. He gets weekends and 2 evenings a week, but only when you approve. All major decisions require both signatures. And the financial support. Lena, this is generous without being controlling. He's not trying to buy his way in. Lena stared at the document, Maya asleep in her bouncer nearby. It feels so official, so final. It's protection for both of you. Miles set the papers down. But if you're not ready, I am ready. That's what scares me. Lena picked up the pen, then set it down again. Once I sign this, Adrian's not going away. He's going to be in my life forever. He's Maya's father. He was always going to be in your life forever. This just defines the terms. I know, but what if... She stopped, struggling to articulate the fear clawing at her chest. What if I'm letting him back in and he reverts? What if this new Adrian is just temporary? What if 6 months from now he's back to choosing the Empire over us? Miles was quiet for a moment. Then, what if he's not? What if he's actually changed? Are you going to punish him forever for who he used to be, or give him credit for who he's becoming? The question sat heavy between them. Lena looked at her daughter, watched Maya's tiny chest rise and fall in perfect rhythm. Adrian had been there for every doctor's appointment since the farmhouse, had learned to change diapers and warm bottles and soothe midnight crying jags, had turned down a trip to Tokyo, a deal worth millions, because it conflicted with Maya's 4-month checkup. Small things, maybe. But they added up to something that looked remarkably like commitment. He asked me something last week, Lena said quietly. Asked if I'd ever consider letting him take Maya overnight, alone, without me there as backup. What did you say? I said no, too soon. But Miles,
The fact that he asked instead of demanding, that he accepted my no without argument, that's different.
So maybe he has changed.
Maybe. Lena picked up the pen again. This time, she signed. I guess we're about to find out. The custody arrangement transformed their dynamic from tentative coexistence to structured partnership.
Adrian showed up for his scheduled evenings with Maya, but he never pushed for more time than agreed. He sent Lena his calendar weeks in advance so she could plan around his commitments. He asked before making purchases for Maya, respecting that Lena wanted input on everything from car seats to clothing choices. He was, in every measurable way, doing exactly what she'd asked him to do. And it was driving Lena quietly insane. Because the more time she spent with this version of Adrian, patient, present, humble, the harder it became to remember why she'd wanted the divorce in the first place. The man who'd signed those papers had been a stranger inhabiting her husband's body. This Adrian felt familiar in ways that made her chest ache, like the evening she came home from grocery shopping to find Adrian on her living room floor, surrounded by pieces of the crib he'd bought for his penthouse. Maya was in her bouncer, gurgling happily while Adrian cursed under his breath at the incomprehensible instruction manual. "You know you could have paid someone to assemble this," Lena said, setting down grocery bags. Adrian looked up, hair disheveled and a smudge of something on his cheek. "Where's the fun in that?" "The fun is in not spending 3 hours wrestling with Swedish furniture design. 2 hours and 40 minutes, actually." Adrian held up a mysterious piece of hardware. "Do you have any idea where this goes?" Lena laughed despite herself, crossing to peer at the instructions. "That's a stabilizer bar. It goes here," she pointed. "How do you know that?" "Because I actually read the instructions instead of just assuming I could figure it out." Adrian's smile was sheepish. Old habits. They assembled the crib together, their hands occasionally brushing as they worked. Lena tried not to notice how natural it felt, working in tandem like this. Tried not to think about all the times during their marriage when she'd wanted exactly this, Adrian present and engaged in the small, mundane tasks of building a life together. When the crib was finally assembled, Adrian stepped back to admire their work. Not bad for a billionaire and his ex-wife. Not bad at all. Lena tested the stability, making sure everything was secure. "Maya's gonna love sleeping here when she stays with you." The words hung in the air. When she stays with you. Not if. When. The transition to overnight visits was approaching, Lena's 6-month postpartum mark, when she'd agreed to start letting Maya sleep at Adrian's place. "Are you okay with that?" Adrian asked quietly. "I know we agreed to it, but if you're not ready—" "I'm terrified," Lena admitted. "But I'm ready. Maya needs to bond with you, and I need to trust that you can take care of her without me hovering. I won't let anything happen to her." "I know. That's not what I'm afraid of." Lena picked up Maya, cradling her close. "I'm afraid that once you have her in your space, surrounded by all your wealth and power, you'll realize how small my life is. How little I have to offer compared to everything you can give her." Adrian's expression softened. "Lena, let me finish." She forced herself to continue. "I know the custody agreement is fair. I know you're not trying to take her away from me, but you have resources I can't compete with. A penthouse instead of a cramped apartment, opportunities I can't provide, and I'm terrified that eventually you'll decide Maya deserves better than what I can give her." "Stop." Adrian closed the distance between them, his voice fierce. "You're her mother. You carried her for 9 months. You bring her into this world. You've been there for every single moment of her life so far. There is nothing I can give her that's more valuable than that." Pretty words won't change reality. "You're Adrian Moretti. I'm a part-time administrative assistant living paycheck to paycheck." "You're Lena Vale, the woman who survived losing everything and built a life anyway. The woman who chose dignity over depending on my money. The woman who's raising our daughter to be strong and independent." Adrian's hands clenched at his sides, clearly wanting to touch her, but respecting the boundaries she'd maintained. "Don't diminish what you've accomplished just because it doesn't come with a corporate title." Lena blinked back tears. "You really believe that?" "I know that, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure Maya knows it too." The first overnight visit happened on a Friday evening in October. Lena packed Maya's bag 3 times, convinced she was forgetting something crucial. Adrian arrived precisely at 6 as scheduled, his expression carefully neutral despite the tension radiating from Lena. I wrote down her schedule, Lena said, handing him a typed document. Feeding times, nap times, bedtime routine. She likes to be rocked before sleep, and the white noise machine needs to be on the ocean setting, not rain. Lena, Adrian's voice was gentle. I've got this. We've been practicing for weeks. I know.
What if she cries for me? What if she won't settle? Then I'll call you. Anytime, any reason. I promise. Lena handed over Maya, her arms feeling impossibly empty. She has her favorite blanket and the stuffed elephant. Don't forget the elephant. I won't forget. Adrian settled Maya against his shoulder, and their daughter immediately grabbed a fistful of his shirt, content. She's going to be fine. You should do something for yourself tonight. Take a bath. Sleep in. Pretend you're 25 and childless for 12 hours. I don't know how to do that anymore. Then just rest. You've earned it. Adrian headed for the door, then paused. Lena, thank you for trusting me with her. After they left, the apartment felt like a tomb. Lena stood in the middle of her living room, staring at the empty space where Maya's bouncer usually sat, and felt tears streaming down her face. Her phone buzzed. A text from Adrian with a photo attached. Maya, in her new crib, eyes already drooping, the stuffed elephant clutched in her tiny hands. She's perfect. Going down easy. Don't worry. Another text followed immediately. And before you ask, yes, I remembered the white noise machine. Ocean setting. I was paying attention. Despite herself, Lena smiled. She texted back, thank you. Let me know if you need anything. I will. Now go do something that's just for you. Doctor's orders. Lena tried. She took a bath, started a book she'd been meaning to read for months, made herself dinner that didn't involve eating one-handed while bouncing a baby. But by 9 p.m., she was staring at her phone, fighting the urge to call and check in. Miles called instead. How are you holding up? I'm a mess, Lena admitted. I know she's fine. I know Adrian's got her, but I keep imagining all these worst-case scenarios. That's normal. You've never been away from her overnight before. What if I made a mistake? What if I'm trusting him too fast, too much? What if you're finally letting yourself believe he's changed? Miles countered. Lena, I've watched him these past few months. This isn't an act. He's genuinely trying. I know. That's what scares me. Why? Lena was quiet for a long moment. Because if he's really changed, if this is who he actually is now, then I have to face the fact that I still love him. And I don't know if I'm ready for that. The admission hung in the air. Miles sighed. For what it's worth, I think he still loves you too, and not the way he loved you before, which was complicated and conditional and tied up in his own issues. He loves you better now, more honestly. How can you tell? Because he let you go, really let you go, gave you space and power and control over his access to Maya. The old Adrian would have fought that with lawyers and money and every weapon in his arsenal. This Adrian accepted your terms without question. That's not control, Lena. That's love. After they hung up, Lena sat with Miles's words, turning them over in her mind. Adrian had shown up, had proved himself, had done everything she'd asked and more. Maybe it was time to stop waiting for him to fail and start acknowledging that he'd already succeeded. Saturday morning arrived with a text from Adrian at 7 a.m. Maya slept through the night, currently having breakfast and judging my bottle warming technique. Want a FaceTime? Lena called immediately. Adrian's face filled the screen, Maya visible in the background in her high chair, gumming a teething biscuit. She looks happy, Lena said, relief flooding through her. She's thriving, ate all her cereal, charmed Marcus into letting her grab his nose, and only spit up on me twice. I'm calling that a win. Lena laughed. That's definitely a win. How are you? Did you sleep? Eventually, it was weird being alone. Good weird or bad weird? Both. Lena hesitated. I was thinking, if you're not busy this afternoon, maybe I could come by. Not to take her back early, just to visit, see your place. Make sure you actually assembled that crib properly. Adrian's smile was cautious but warm. I'd like that. How about 2 o'clock? 2 o'clock works. When Lena arrived at Adrian's penthouse that afternoon, she barely recognized it. The cold, minimalist space she remembered from their marriage had been transformed. Colorful play mats covered the hardwood floors. A changing table sat in what used to be his home office. Photos of Maya covered the refrigerator. Lena recognized several she'd sent him, but others were new, captured during his time with their daughter. "You redecorated," she said, looking around in wonder. "I made it baby-friendly. And me-friendly." Adrian gestured to the living room where his laptop sat, surrounded by scattered toys. "Turns out I can work from home more than I thought. Who knew?" Lena walked through the space, taking in all the changes. In the nursery, she found the crib they'd assembled together, along with a rocking chair that looked suspiciously comfortable and a bookshelf already filled with children's books. "You've been reading to her," Lena said, picking up a well-worn copy of Goodnight Moon. "Every night. She seems to like it. Or, at least, she doesn't cry when I do the voices." "You do voices?" Adrian's cheeks colored slightly. "The cow in Goodnight Moon has a very distinctive moo. Maya's a tough critic." The image of Adrian Moretti, billionaire CEO, doing animal voices for their daughter made something warm bloom in Lena's chest. This was who he'd become. Not the driven, distant man she'd married, but someone softer, more present, more real. "Can I ask you something?" Lena set down the book. "Anything." "Do you ever miss it, the way things used to be? When work was everything and you didn't have to think about feeding schedules and diaper changes?" Adrian was quiet for a long moment. "Sometimes I miss the simplicity of it, knowing exactly who I was and what I wanted. But Lena, that person was lonely, successful, but hollow. I didn't know it then, but I know it now." He met her eyes. "I don't miss who I was. I don't even like who I was. The man who had everything and appreciated nothing. You appreciated some things. I appreciated the idea of you, the trophy of having a beautiful wife. But I didn't appreciate the reality of you, the person you were, the needs you had, the life you wanted to build together." Adrian's voice was rough. "I'm sorry for that. I know I've said it before, but I don't think I can say it enough." Lena crossed to where he stood by the window. For the first time in months, she let herself really look at him. The dark circles under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights with Maya. The casual clothes that had replaced his usual tailored suits. The way he held himself differently, less like he was preparing for battle, more like he was finally at peace. "You've changed," she said softly. "I had to. Losing you was the wake-up call I needed but didn't deserve. What if you hadn't lost me? What if I'd stayed, accepted the scraps of attention, convinced myself it was enough? Then I would have destroyed you, slowly, and I would have destroyed Maya's chance to have a father who actually knows how to be present." Adrian's hands clenched at his sides. "I'm grateful you left. Grateful you had the strength to demand better, even if it meant I lost everything that mattered." Lena reached out, her fingers brushing his. The contact was electric, sending sparks up her arm. Adrian froze, barely breathing. "You didn't lose everything," she said quietly. "You lost who we were. But maybe we can figure out who we could be. Not going back, but moving forward." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm tired of being afraid, tired of waiting for you to fail. Tired of pretending I don't feel anything when you're around." Lena took a shaky breath. "I'm saying maybe it's time to stop being just co-parents and start being, I don't know what, but something more." Adrian's hand came up to cup her face, his touch gentle as a question. "Are you sure? Because Lena, if we try this again and I screw it up, then we'll deal with it, together, like partners." She leaned into his palm. "I'm not saying we rush into anything. I'm not saying we're getting back together tomorrow, but I am saying I'm willing to try. If you are." "I've been trying since the moment I saw you in that mall." Adrian's thumb brushed her cheekbone. "I never stopped trying, never stopped hoping. Then maybe it's time I started hoping too." He kissed her then, soft and careful and full of promise. It wasn't the passionate, consuming kisses from their marriage. Those had been about possession and heat and avoiding real intimacy through physical connection. This was different. This was a question and an answer and a beginning all at once. When they pulled apart, Lena was crying. "What's wrong?" Adrian asked, concerned. "Nothing. Everything." She laughed through her tears. I didn't think we'd get here. Didn't think it was possible." Neither did I, but here we are. From the living room, Maya started fussing. They broke apart, both moving toward the sound. But Adrian caught Lena's hand, stopping her. Wait, before we go back to being parents, can I say one more thing? Okay. I love you. I never stopped loving you. But I love you differently now. Better, more honestly. And if you give me another chance, I'm going to spend every day showing you that this time I choose you. Not the empire, not my mother's approval, not some image of who I'm supposed to be, you and Maya, and the life we can build together. Lena's throat was tight. That's all I ever wanted. I know. I finally know. They went to Maya together, and as Lena scooped up their daughter, she felt something shift, not into what they'd been before, but into something new, something chosen rather than assumed, something built on hard-won trust instead of romantic idealism. The following weeks were a dance of carefully negotiated intimacy. Adrian didn't move back in. They both agreed that was too much too soon, but he started staying for dinner after dropping Maya off. Started texting Lena things that had nothing to do with their daughter, articles he thought she'd find interesting, jokes that made her laugh, questions about her day that showed he was actually listening. They went on their first official date 6 weeks later. Miles volunteered to babysit, giving them a knowing look as they left. Don't do anything I wouldn't do, he called after them. That's not much of a restriction, Lena shot back. Adrian took her to a small Italian restaurant in a neighborhood she'd mentioned loving, but never being able to afford. Not the flashy, Michelin-starred places he would have chosen before, but somewhere warm and intimate where they could actually talk. Over pasta and wine, they laid out the terms of this new relationship. Honesty, even when it hurt. Communication instead of assumption. Boundaries that protected rather than restricted. And most importantly, a commitment to choosing each other every day, not just once. This feels like a business negotiation, Lena said, amused. Would you prefer I sweep you off your feet with grand gestures? No, I prefer this. The real conversation, the actual partnership. She reached across the table, lacing her fingers with his. This is what I always wanted from you. Then this is what you'll get, every day, for as long as you'll have me. That night, when Adrian dropped her off at her apartment, he kissed her goodnight on the doorstep, gentle and sweet and full of restrained want. I should go, he said, even as his arms tightened around her waist. You should. Lena didn't move away. But Adrian, thank you for tonight, for all of this, for becoming someone worth loving again. I'm trying to become someone worthy of your love. I'm not sure I'm there yet. You're closer than you think. 3 months later, on a quiet Sunday morning, everything came together. Lena woke in her apartment to find Adrian already there. He'd spent the night on her couch after a late evening of assembled baby furniture had turned into conversation that lasted until 2 a.m. Maya was in her crib, still sleeping. And for the first time in over a year, Lena felt completely at peace. She found Adrian in the kitchen, attempting to make coffee. You're butchering my coffee maker, she said, amused. I'm engineering a solution to its overcomplicated design. You're supposed to just press the button. That's too simple. There has to be a better way. He stopped when she started laughing. What? You. Trying to optimize my 5-year-old coffee maker at 7 in the morning. Some things never change. Some things, Adrian agreed, pulling her into his arms. But some things do. Lena settled against his chest, breathing in the familiar scent of him. I've been thinking. About? About us. About where this is going. She pulled back to look at him. I'm not ready to get married again. Maybe not for a long time. But I'm ready for more than what we have now. What does more look like? It looks like you having a drawer here. Maybe a toothbrush. It looks like us being honest about the fact that we're not just co-parents anymore. That we're together. Really together. Lena took a breath. And eventually, not now, but eventually, it looks like us being a family. Under one roof. Building a life that's ours, not mine or yours, but ours. Adrian was very still. Are you sure? I'm terrified, but I'm sure. She cupped his face in her hands. You've proved yourself, Adrian, over and over. You've shown up, you've changed, you've chosen us even when it cost you. I'm not saying it'll be perfect. We'll fight, we'll struggle. but I believe we can make it work this time. I won't let you down. You might. You're human. We both are. But the difference is, this time we'll talk about it. Work through it. Choose each other even in the hard moments. Lena kissed him softly. That's what partnership means. From the bedroom, Maya started crying. They broke apart, sharing a smile. I'll get her, Adrian said. You make coffee, the right way. Deal. Lena watched him go, heard his voice through the door talking to their daughter in the gentle tone he'd developed over months of practice. And she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real, genuine hope for a future that included all three of them. Later that morning, with Maya fed and playing on her mat, Adrian produced a small box from his jacket pocket. I'm not proposing, he said quickly, seeing Lena's expression. I know you're not ready for that, but I wanted you to have this. Inside the box was a simple silver bracelet. Engraved on the inside were 3 words: chosen, not controlled. It's a reminder, Adrian said, fastening it around her wrist, of who we are now, of what we've built. You chose to give me another chance. I choose to earn it every day. And someday, when you're ready, maybe we'll choose to make it official again. But until then, this is us. Partnership, equals, building something real. Lena's eyes were wet as she looked at the bracelet, then at him. It's perfect. You're perfect. I'm really not. You are to me. You and Maya. My whole world in 2 people. Adrian pulled her close. I spent years building an empire that meant nothing. Now, I'm building a family that means everything. That's not a trait I'll ever regret. They sat together on the floor, watching Maya discover her toes with intense concentration. And in that moment, in that ordinary, beautiful moment, Lena understood something fundamental. Love wasn't about grand gestures or perfect romance. It wasn't about being swept off your feet or living in a fairy tale. Love was this: 2 people who'd broken each other, healed separately, and chosen to try again. Not because it was easy, but because it was worth it. Not because they were perfect, but because they were committed to growing together. Love was Adrian asking before assuming. Was Lena trusting instead of testing? Was both of them showing up for their daughter and for each other, day after imperfect day? 6 months later, on a crisp spring afternoon, Adrian asked Lena to marry him. Not in a restaurant or at some elaborate event, but in their apartment, theirs, because he'd moved in 3 months earlier and the space had transformed into a real home. Maya was napping. They were folding laundry together, and Adrian just stopped mid-fold and said, "Marry me." Lena looked up, a tiny sock in her hand. What? Marry me. Not because we have to, not because it's expected, but because I want to. Because I want to stand in front of everyone we know and promise to choose you every day for the rest of my life. Because I want Maya to grow up seeing what a real partnership looks like. He set down the shirt he was folding. Because I love you, and I'm ready, but only if you are. Lena was quiet for a long moment, then she smiled. Ask me again in 6 months. If we've survived Maya's first birthday party and you still want to marry me, then we'll talk. Adrian laughed. That's not a no. It's not a yes either. It's a maybe. A hopeful maybe. I'll take it. And he did. He took her maybe and her boundaries and her need to move slowly. He took late nights with a teething baby and arguments about whose turn it was to do dishes. He took all of it, the messy, imperfect reality of building a life together. Because that's what love looked like now. Not possession or control or desperate need, but choice. Daily, deliberate choice. When Adrian asked again 6 months later, after Maya's chaotic first birthday party, after a fight about his mother's continued attempts to interfere, after 100 small moments of choosing each other, Lena said yes. Not because she'd forgotten the past, but because she'd seen the future and wanted to build it together. They got married in a small ceremony at Lake Vista Park, the place where Lena had once come to escape their failing marriage. Maya was the flower girl toddling down the makeshift aisle in Adrian's arms before being handed off to Miles, who stood as Lena's man of honor with tears streaming down his face. Adrian's vows were simple. I promise to show up every day for you, for Maya, for whatever children we might have, for the life we're building. I won't be perfect, but I'll be present, and I'll choose you, always. Lena's response was just as straightforward. I promise to trust you. Even when it's hard, even when old fears try to convince me you'll leave, I promise to build this partnership with honesty and hope. And I promise to remind you, and myself, that we're not who we were. We're who we chose to become. Together. When they kissed, Maya clapped for Miles's arms, and the small gathering of friends and family laughed through their tears. It wasn't the fairy tale ending Lena had once imagined. It was better. Because this was real. Hard-won and honest and built on a foundation of genuine change rather than romantic idealism. This was a love that had died and been resurrected, that had been tested by loss and proven by time, that had transformed from desperate need into deliberate choice. And as Adrian spun her in an impromptu dance on the grass by the lake, Maya giggling in Miles's arms nearby, Lena understood something profound. Their story hadn't restarted when Adrian showed up at the hospital. It had moved forward, into something new, something stronger, into a partnership that wasn't perfect, but was perfectly theirs. Steady, equal, and finally, completely, beautifully whole. They didn't go back to who they were. They built something better. A family chosen, not controlled. A love earned, not assumed. And a future that belonged to all of them, together.